What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and oh my gosh! There are many ways that you can start off a season, and Criminal Minds just freaking nailed it. Like, holy crap! This was awesome. Like, I know that sounds kind of surprising, but tuning in tonight, I was already excited. I was like, okay, last season ended on kind of a cliffhanger. We've got Mr. Scratch breaking out along with several other, I think they said 13 other, well, 13 including him, serial killers, all break out, so now they're on the loose. Such a good setup for this season. So I'm already excited. I'm already like, this is going to be great. The thing is, though, as I'm tuning in, all I can think is, I expect it to be good, but that doesn't really mean much. And honestly, like, I'm thinking about the review afterwards. I'm like, okay, even if it is good, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know, like last season, they started off with a great start to the season. You know, introducing the assassins. It's a great premise, but then it was hardly touched on after that. You know, they went until the mid-season finale to really talk about it again, and then we didn't get to see it until the start of the second half of the season, what happened with all the assassins. And even then, like, they pretty much captured them all. You know, it was like done like that. And then it was touched on a bit at the end with what happened with Derek, you know, like the main assassin or whatever. You know, it was talked about, but it wasn't really a part of the season as a whole. It felt like, oh, yeah, this is a great setup. You won't see it for a while. So I'm going into this kind of expecting it to be good. You know, it already has a great setup. So the only way they really could have messed it up is if it starts off all the other serial killers have been captured except for Mr. Scratch, Peter Lewis. And that's, you know, that's what they're trying to do in this episode, is just capture him. If that's how it started, I probably would have been kind of pissed. But they don't start off like that, so this episode's bound to be good. But the thing is, the way that they set it up is so brilliant. And even if we don't see Mr. Scratch again until, like, later on, you know, more like halfway through the season, I still feel like this is enough of a good setup that we don't need to see him because there's other stuff going on as well. I don't expect to see him in the next episode. If we do, holy crap, this show has got a brilliant premise for this entire season. But if not, I'm still excited because you know, it'll be talked about. It's not just going to be something like, oh yeah, we're still searching for the assassins. Who knows what's going to happen in the next episode? You know, at the end, he's doing something. We don't know what it is yet. The name maybe means something to a more hardcore fan that remembers a lot of stuff. The name Dennis Holt doesn't mean anything to me right now. So, but anyway, I'm excited for this season. It's got a great setup. But let's talk about this episode. It was brilliant. I mean, you start off a good introduction for, well, first of all, a very mysterious opening. You got this guy with his hands like tied to this bar behind his head, and he's just walking out in the middle of the road, dehydrated, nearly gets hit by a truck, and then they get taken in, or he gets taken in and taken to the hospital. Something's going on with his stomach. It doesn't show what, and then they cut to the new character, Luke Galvez, I believe. I'm going to call him Luke, because I'm pretty sure they said his name was Luke, or Lou. One of the two. Anyway, I'm going to say Galvez. I'm pretty sure that's his name. So they show him, he's handling these people, not really sure what's going on. It's like, okay, obviously he's an FBI agent because I saw he's the new character, so, you know, is this a sting? What's going on? It is a sting. He manages to capture these two people. Rossi shows up and he's like, thanks for all the help you've been giving us. And they managed to give us some exposition about his character without sounding too forced. You know, like there are times whenever you learn exposition about a character or about what's been going on behind the scenes, you know, before this season started. Sometimes the exposition can be really like, oh, so what did you do? Oh, well, I did this and this and this. Oh, cool. Have you heard about the new guy? He's this and this and this. And it's all like, okay, clearly this is just forced exposition. They don't do when Reed and JJ are talking about Galvez later on, it's like, okay, this is very forced exposition. But when Rossi's talking to him, it's not. It's very clean. It's very clear. He's been helping them track down these serial killers, you know, behind the scenes in between these two seasons, and they've managed to get down to 5 serial killers left out of the 13. So they haven't caught all of them. They have caught most of them, which is kind of disappointing. But it's still like, there are some left. We're not completely out of storylines for this season, so that's good to see. The next one on the list is a guy that Galvez tracked down the first time when he was captured, a guy called the Crimson King, and apparently the kid that ended up in the hospital, they're suspecting it was him because BAU was carved into the stomach, and that's what this guy did, the Crimson King. And so what transpires next is just this brilliant little mystery, because one of my biggest things about Criminal Minds is that even though it's a crime show, it's not really a mystery crime show. Most of the time it's very straightforward. It's like, okay, you see what's going on, you see who the bad guy is. Most of the time it's just like, okay, so why is he doing it? That's the only reason that you really tune in to watch the show. It's like, oh, what crazy guy is there this week? How are they going to find out what he's doing and stop him? That's it. It's not really, here's a clue, here's a clue, here's a clue, who done it. It's not one of those shows. So it's very unique in that aspect, but at times it can drag on a little bit. It can be like, well, I want kind of a mystery sometimes. I don't want it to always be, here's your bad guy, here's why he's doing it, boom, there's the show. That can get kind of boring after 12 seasons, like you need to add something different. This episode added something different. The entire time it's like it's a guessing game. It's like, what is the Crimson King behind it? Well, probably not, because these cuts are more shallow and more hesitant, not his work. Well, how do they know? Well, let's see, we're not really sure. Oh, turns out this guy was gassed with some white smoke that was hypnotic suggestion. Mr. Scratch is probably behind it. Okay, so what's his plan? Well, maybe he's having this guy that he hypnotized into being violent, maybe he's having him help out or something along those lines. And they find another victim, a girl who had Hotch carved into her head. And now all of a sudden there's even more. And it's constantly compiling. It's like you're figuring out more and more just how diabolical Mr. Scratch's plan is. From giving them the girl and then finding out, okay, so he wanted us to compile a list of all the dissociative identity disorder people in this area. And then it's like, oh wait, I just gave it to Brian. And then that's when they realize, holy crap, Brian is under his spell. And just before, most of the time it's like, oh, they happen to find out just before, something goes bad. They manage to stop it just in time. This episode, no. It works out to where they figure out one step too late. It's like Mr. Scratch is always one step ahead of them. I love that, because it feels like they finally have an opponent worthy of taking on the BAU. He was always one step ahead in this, and ultimately the only thing that Mr. Scratch didn't succeed in is that Brian got taken in and the Crimson King managed to still be alive at the end of it. And maybe that was part of his plan. It's not really a failure for him, because he got the list of these dissociative identity disorder people from Brian. So he still technically got a win. It's just it didn't the BAU got a win too. So it's almost like they both won in this episode, and yet it still feels like they lost since Mr. Scratch won, since he now has this list of DID people. So it's very clever in the way it's set up. Having Brian turn out to be the bad guy in all of this is another clever setup. Having it to where Mr. Scratch convinced him he was the Crimson King, that's another good twist. All of it was just so well set up. The case was brilliant. All the twists and turns it took were brilliant, and it felt like the team was... At one point it feels like, okay, they know what's going on now. Now it's time to stop them. Nope, they have no clue what's going on right now. They have to rethink their thinking, because Mr. Scratch is one step ahead, and now all of a sudden they're on the back foot, and now there's a cop dead because they weren't quick enough to figure out what was going on. And you could see what that means to them. I mean, Tara is very clearly upset by the fact that she didn't catch this in time. It wasn't really her fault, but you understand why she feels like it is. And that's another thing they did well here, is that most of the time you have a character being really harsh on themselves unnecessarily. In this one, it kind of makes sense why. She was questioning him, she was talking to him, all the clues were there, but she didn't catch them soon enough. And then a cop died because of that. So even though it's really not her fault because it was a brilliant plan by Mr. Scratch, at the same time, she's the one that missed the clues. She's the one that didn't catch on quick enough. And so now even though it's not directly her fault, it still is her responsibility that she didn't catch it. So a lot of really brilliant touches within this episode itself. And overall, I think, that's my opinion of the episode in general, but something about this episode just, it felt a bit more dark. It felt like it was better written this time around. Last season, there were a lot of awkward episodes where it felt like it was just a bunch of dialogue. And it felt like it was all written, the script, it was way too well scripted. I didn't really enjoy last season as much as I usually do. This season has started off so well because the dialogue flows a lot more. The clues that they're finding, it feels like it's flowing a lot better. I don't know what they've done, but for some reason, this episode just, it feels like it's such a better, fluid episode. And I love it. It's brilliant. I've said brilliant so many times, but it really was a brilliant episode. And it's a great way to start off the season. There's so many good things about it, so many good things that it's setting up for this season. How often will we see Mr. Scratch? Who knows? What's his ultimate goal? Who knows? But what we have is we have a criminal who's escaped. He's trying to take revenge on the BAU. It's reminiscent of, what they had with George Foyet, those many years ago. Whenever he and Hotch had their little battle going on, which ultimately ended with Hotch's wife getting killed. It's reminiscent of that. It's still not the same, because we've only known him for like an episode before he escaped last season, he's not a big character, but it's got a personal connection, and he's a super genius. So, it feels like it's a perfect setup for him to really take on the BAU and possibly succeed at some point, and possibly get some sort of victory against them. Maybe we have a character die this season. Traumatic, but that would be a brilliant little touch to throw in on this season. That it's showing that these writers still have what it takes to give us enjoyment, to give us a good show, even after 12 seasons. Last couple seasons have been a little bit off, have been a little bit slower than normal, but this season's got me excited. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with it. And above all else, Garcia and Galvez interaction are easily the best thing about this episode. I love, all the stuff with Mr. Scratch and all of that stuff. It's great. It's great for the plot. But if it's all dark, if it's all just, oh, we gotta catch this guy, that's not where the enjoyment comes from. That's part of it. That's part of what makes this show great. But the other thing is the team has always been good. It's always been a good team to follow. It's always been enjoyable to watch them interact with each other. And one of the best interactions were Garcia and Morgan. Watching them interact, watching him call her baby girl, watching her flirt back with all her chocolate love, all that stuff was just brilliant. And you could, as soon as Reed asked, how's Garcia like him? And he gets on the elevator with her and she just does not smile at all. All I could think is, in her mind, she's thinking, you're no Morgan. That's all I could think. And they didn't even have to say it. That was one of the great things about this little joke that they had going on. Like, even at the end, it was like, she didn't even have to say, you're no Morgan. You could see it written on her face that, yeah, this guy is a hunk. Who cares? He's not Morgan. And they even have this little joke thrown in the midst of all this stuff where they find out that Brian was being held down whenever he was being tortured and stuff by Mr. Scratch. He was being held down with like some BDSM stuff. And so Galvez has to ask Garcia to look up, the local sex stores, adult shops, stuff like that in the area. And you could just see her like wanting to say something, but she's like, wait, but it's not Morgan. And just stops herself. She's like, I will get that for you, Agent Galvez, and just turns off the call. It's brilliant. It's another nice little touch that they've thrown in to give the show its life, to give it more than just, okay, we've got an exciting premise, we've still got the team. We've still got a good team set up. And on top of that, they didn't even bring Paget Brewster back in this one, and yet the team was still good. She's coming back in the next episode. That's exciting. I can't wait to see her come back because she is one of my favorite agents of all the show. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be a good season. I'm excited. I hope you guys are too. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Next week looks like it's not going to be tied directly to the main storyline. It might be still. Like maybe Mr. Scratch is somehow behind this arsonist guy, but whatever it is, it looks exciting. And even if it's not tied to Mr. Scratch, I hope they still give us enough of that to make us feel like, okay, we've got a good storyline for this season. Stay tuned. But anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. We can talk about it, all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Criminal Minds reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.